Welcome, and thank you for choosing to spend this quiet interlude with us. This audiobook novel has been crafted as a gentle companion, designed to help weave a peaceful atmosphere around you, offering a sanctuary of calm as you prepare to unwind or simply wish to find a moment of deep serenity at the end of your day. In our story, Steam from Clay Mug, Dawn's First Hue, we invite you to step into the quiet comfort of the Sunstone Cottage. Here you will join Alistair as he moves through the gentle rhythms of early morning, where the simple ritual of preparing a warm drink becomes an opportunity to notice the subtle beauty of the world awakening, and the air itself seems to hold the soft promise of a peaceful day. Should you find comfort here and wish for more moments like this, perhaps consider liking this audiobook novel and subscribing to our channel before you settle in fully and allow your device to rest. Now, we invite you to relax, breathe gently, and begin your journey into the tranquil world of Steam from Clay Mug, Dawn's First Hue. Chapter 1. The First Stirrings. The darkness in the small bedroom was a soft, encompassing blanket, not heavy, but deeply still. It was the kind of quiet that exists just before the world outside begins to think of waking, a quiet filled with the subtle internal hum of a sleeping house. Alistair stirred, a slow unfurling beneath the gentle weight of his quilt. The fabric, worn smooth over time, whispered faintly as he shifted, a sound almost imperceptible against the profound silence. He lay for a moment, his breathing even and calm, feeling the cool air of the room on his face, a contrast to the cocooning warmth beneath the covers. There was no urgency, no call to rise, only the gradual return of awareness to the present moment, to the feel of the soft cotton sheets against his skin. Slowly he pushed the quilt aside, the movement unhurried. His bare feet met the wooden floorboards, their surface cool and smooth, polished by years of quiet passage. The floor offered a grounding sensation, a familiar welcome. He rose, his form a dim silhouette in the pre-dawn gloom, and stood for a moment, allowing his senses to adjust. The air held a faint, clean scent, perhaps a hint of the dried lavender he kept in a small sachet on the bedside table, or simply the scent of undisturbed air in a well-kept room. From the kitchen, barely audible, came the faintest hum, the quiet thrum of the small refrigerator going about its constant, unassuming work, a tiny anchor of sound in the stillness. Alistair moved toward the window, his steps measured and soft. The curtains, made of a simple unbleached linen, hung still. He reached out, his fingers finding the familiar texture of the fabric, and gently drew one side back a fraction. The world outside was a canvas of deep indigo, the stars still visible, though their brilliance was beginning to soften, to recede, as if anticipating the coming light. Far along the eastern horizon, the indigo was a shade less intense, a subtle dilution that hinted at the day to come. There were no sharp lines yet, no defined shapes, only gradations of deep blue and the faintest suggestion of a luminous change. He watched this silent, slow transformation, the vastness of the sky holding a profound peace. The cottage itself seemed to breathe around him. A faint creak sounded from somewhere in the walls, the sound of old timbers settling, a familiar nocturnal murmur that spoke of shelter and solidity. These were the quiet conversations of the house, sounds he knew well, each one a note in the symphony of its enduring presence. He let the curtain fall back into place, the soft fabric whispering shut, and turned from the window. The path to the kitchen was familiar, even in the dimness. He didn't need light to guide him. His feet knew the way. The slight variations in the floorboards, the turn by the small bookshelf laden with well-loved volumes. He paused at the doorway of his bedroom, looking back into the shadowed space. The quilt lay partially turned down on the bed, an invitation to return. But the quiet call of the unfolding morning was gently persistent. There was a sense of anticipation, not for anything grand or eventful, but for the simple unfolding sequence of small moments that constituted the beginning of a day. He took a slow, easy breath, the cool air filling his lungs, and then, with a quiet sense of purpose, he moved out of the bedroom and towards the kitchen, leaving the deep stillness of the night behind, ready to greet the subtle stirrings of the dawn. The house remained hushed, holding its breath, it seemed, waiting with him. The hallway was short, leading directly into the combined kitchen and living space. Here the gloom was a little less dense, perhaps due to the larger window on the far side of the living area, though its curtains, too, were still drawn. The air felt a fraction cooler, carrying the faintest, almost imperceptible scent of old wood and the herbs that hung in the small bunches from a beam near the stove, rosemary and thyme. Their daytime fragrance now a mere ghost in the pre-dawn air. He felt the subtle shift in atmosphere as he crossed the threshold, a transition from the deeper quiet of the bedroom to the gentle potential of the waking spaces. His movements remained unhurried, imbued with a natural rhythm that matched the tranquility of the hour. There was no need for haste. The morning would unfold at its own pace, and he was content to move with it. The floorboards here had a slightly different feel underfoot, perhaps a wider grain or a different finish, a subtle map of the cottage that his senses navigated effortlessly. He was attuned to these small details, the quiet language of his home, a language spoken not in words but in textures, in subtle shifts of light and sound, in the very air he breathed. This deep familiarity was a source of quiet comfort, a grounding presence, as the world outside began its slow, inevitable turn towards the light. He reached the edge of the kitchen area, his hand resting lightly on the smooth, cool edge of the wooden counter. It was here that the first small rituals of the day would begin, here that the transition from the stillness of night to the gentle activity of morning would find its first expression. The promise of warmth, of flavor, of a quiet moment of contemplation with a comforting mug in hand was a gentle pull, a simple pleasure anticipated with a quiet sense of contentment. The house waited, the sky waited, and Alistair, in the heart of his peaceful dwelling, waited too, ready for the first soft hues of dawn. Chapter 2. The Ritual of Warmth. Alistair stood for a moment in the quiet dimness of the kitchen, the cool, smooth surface of the countertop, a steady presence beneath his resting hand. The air here was still, carrying only the faintest hint of last night's herbal tea, a lingering ghost of chamomile and mint. He reached for the small, familiar kettle that sat on the counter, its polished steel surface reflecting the deep shadows of the room like a dark mirror. The handle was cool to the touch. He lifted it, its weight just right, balanced and easy, and carried it the few steps to the sink. The tap turned with a soft, slightly stiff sound, a small punctuation in the silence, followed by the gentle rush of water filling the kettle. He listened to the changing pitch as the water level rose, a familiar melody that signaled the beginning of this quiet ritual. Once filled to the desired level, he closed the tap, the sudden cessation of running water making the kitchen feel even quieter than before. He placed the kettle back on its base with a soft click, a small, precise sound. Pressing the switch, another gentle click initiated a low, almost inaudible hum as the heating element began its work. While the water slowly warmed, Alistair turned his attention to selecting his tea and mug. On a simple wooden shelf above the counter, a collection of earthenware mugs stood in a neat row, each one unique in its slight imperfections, its particular glaze. He ran his fingers lightly over them, feeling the different textures, one perfectly smooth, another with a slightly ribbed surface. His hand settled on his favorite, a sturdy mug of a deep, earthy terracotta color, its surface pleasingly rough, warm even before it held any heat. He took it down, its familiar weight a comfort in his palm. Next, he opened a small, round tin, its lid fitting snugly. Inside, loose-leaf herbal tea lay in a fragrant medley of dried petals, leaves, and tiny pieces of fruit. The aroma that wafted up was subtle yet complex hints of rosehip, hibiscus, and a whisper of citrus peel. It was a scent that spoke of quiet gardens and gentle sunshine. He took a small silver-plated measuring spoon, its bowl slightly tarnished with age, and carefully scooped a measure of the tea into a stainless steel infuser, a small spherical cage with a fine mesh. The dried leaves and petals made a soft, rustling sound as they settled into the infuser. He closed it with a delicate snap, the tiny clasp secure in its fragrant contents. The kettle was beginning to make soft, sighing sounds now as the water heated, tiny bubbles forming and rising within. The hum grew a fraction louder, a gentle vibration felt more than heard. Alistair stood by the counter, the tea infuser resting beside the terracotta mug, simply listening. These were the unhurried moments, the spaces between actions, where the quiet of the morning could be most deeply felt. He observed the way the faint pre-dawn light from the still-curtained living room window cast an ethereal glow on the edge of the metallic sink, highlighting a single lingering droplet of water like a tiny jewel. The house was still, save for the kettle's gentle song. Soon, the sighing sounds within the kettle grew more insistent, culminating in a soft, steady rumble. Steam began to escape from the spout in a thin, almost invisible plume, carrying with it the clean scent of heated water. Then, with a decisive but gentle click, the kettle switched itself off. The sudden silence that followed was profound, broken only by the faint ticking sound as the metal of the kettle began to cool. Alistair lifted the kettle, its handle now pleasantly warm, and poured the hot water slowly over the tea infuser, which he had placed inside the terracotta mug. A cloud of fragrant steam immediately billowed upwards, carrying the herbal aroma more strongly now, filling the cool kitchen air with its gentle perfume. He watched as the water in the mug began to take on a pale amber hue, the color deepening with each passing second as the tea steeped. He placed the kettle back on its base and found a small ceramic saucer to rest the infuser on once the tea was ready. He preferred his tea to steep for just a few minutes to capture the delicate flavors without any bitterness. These small, deliberate actions, the measuring, the pouring, the waiting, were all part of the ritual, a mindful practice that anchored him in the present moment. There was a simple satisfaction in the process, in creating something warm and comforting with his own hands. The kitchen, still mostly in shadow, felt like a sample-protected haven, a place of quiet creation. The only light came from the subtle glow filtering from the living area and the faint, ethereal luminescence that was beginning to seep around the edges of the kitchen window blind, a sign that the dawn was progressing. He didn't feel the need to turn on any artificial lights. His eyes were accustomed to the dimness, and there was a certain peace in navigating by touch and familiar placement. The warmth from the mug began to radiate outwards, a small circle of comfort on the cool countertop. He rested his hands around it for a moment, not yet lifting it, just feeling that initial transfer of heat, a gentle promise of the soothing drink to come. The aroma of the steeping tea was a soft invitation, a prelude to the quiet observation that would follow. Chapter 3. Observing the Dawn. After a few minutes, judging the tea to be perfectly steeped by the rich, warm color that had suffused the water, Alastair carefully lifted the infuser from the mug. A few last drops of amber liquid dripped from its mesh before he placed it on the small saucer he had set aside. The steam still rose in gentle, swirling patterns from the surface of the tea, carrying its soft, herbal fragrance. He cupped the terracotta mug in both hands, its rough texture pleasantly warm, its weight substantial and grounding. With slow, deliberate steps, he moved from the kitchen area into the adjoining living space, the wooden floorboards cool beneath his bare feet. He made his way to a favorite armchair, a sturdy, comfortable piece upholstered in a soft, faded corduroy, positioned near the large window that overlooked his small garden. He settled into the chair with a soft sigh, the cushions yielding gently beneath him. The mug rested on his lap for a moment as he reached to draw back the heavy linen curtains. The material slid smoothly along the rail, its rustle a soft, satisfying sound. As the view outside was revealed, a breathtaking panorama of the nascent dawn greeted him. The deep indigo of the pre-dawn sky had now given way to a symphony of soft, transitional colors. Along the eastern horizon, delicate strokes of rose pink and pale apricot were brushed against a backdrop of lavender and deepening blue directly overhead. Alastair took his first sip of the tea. The warmth spread instantly through him, a gentle tide flowing from his chest outward. The flavor was subtle, a blend of floral notes with a hint of citrusy brightness, clean and comforting on his palate. He held the warm mug, his gaze fixed on the unfolding spectacle outside. The world was still hushed, bathed in this ethereal early light. The shapes in his garden were beginning to emerge from the shadows, their outlines softened by the diffuse glow. The dew-laden leaves of the rose bushes near the window glistened as if sprinkled with tiny diamonds, each droplet catching and refracting the nascent light. He watched as a delicate spiderweb strung between the branches of a young apple tree became visible, its intricate threads silvered with moisture, a masterpiece of natural engineering. The light caught it, transforming it into a shimmering net. There was no wind yet, and the web hung perfectly still, a fragile jewel in the quiet air. The colors in the sky were intensifying, the pinks becoming more vibrant, the golds beginning to assert themselves. Clouds, thin and wispy high above, caught the light and seemed to glow from within, their edges tinged with a soft, fiery orange. It was a slow, majestic performance unfolding at its own unhurried pace. Alastair took another sip of his tea, the warmth a pleasant counterpoint to the cool morning air that still held a slight chill. He noticed the subtle details, The way the shadows lay long and soft across the small patch of lawn, the deep green of the fern fronds in a terracotta pot on the patio, their color slowly becoming more vibrant as the light grew. The very air seemed to shimmer with a quiet energy, a sense of awakening. He wasn't thinking, not in any directed way. He was simply observing, allowing the beauty of the dawn to fill his awareness. His breathing was slow and even, unconsciously mirroring the calm and steady progression of the light. The familiar contours of his garden became clearer with each passing moment. The old wooden bench under the climbing rose, the small bird bath with its patina of age, the stepping stones leading towards a little shed at the far end, all these simple everyday features took on a special beauty in the dawn light. He could see the delicate veins on a broad hosta leaf near the window, and the subtle variations in color on the petals of a few late-blooming cyclamen huddled at the base of a tree. The world was being painted anew, right before his eyes. He continued to sip his tea, the warmth a constant, reassuring presence in his hands. The aroma of the herbs mingled with the faint, fresh scent of the morning air that was beginning to seep in around the edges of the window frame. There was a profound sense of peace in these moments, a feeling of being perfectly attuned to the rhythm of the natural world. The house was silent around him, a steadfast observer like himself. The armchair cradled him comfortably, its worn fabric a testament to many such quiet mornings spent in contemplation. The dawn was not a dramatic explosion of light, but a gentle, gradual unfolding, a soft revelation of the day to come, and Alistair was content to be a quiet witness to its serene arrival. Chapter 4. Garden Air and Gentle Sounds. As the sun climbed a little higher, its presence now more asserted than hinted at, Alistair felt a subtle shift in the air within the room. The initial chill of the very early morning was beginning to recede, replaced by a more neutral coolness. He reached forward and turned the small latch on the window, pushing it open just a few inches. A gentle current of fresh morning air immediately flowed in, cool and invigorating, carrying with it the distinct, clean sense of his awakening garden. There was the unmistakable aroma of damp earth, rich and loamy, and the subtle, sweet fragrance of dew-kissed leaves and the first tentative blossoms opening to the light. This influx of outdoor scents subtly changed the atmosphere in the room, bridging the quiet interior with the vibrant, living world just beyond the glass. With the window slightly ajar, the sounds of the garden also became more distinct. The profound silence of the pre-dawn was now gently punctuated by the first tentative notes of birdsong. A robin, perhaps perched in the branches of the old apple tree, offered a series underscore of clear, melodious phrases, each note pure and distinct in the still air. Another, more distant bird answered with a softer, more complex trill. These were not the full, exuberant choruses of later morning, but rather the gentle initial greetings of the avian world, a delicate soundscape weaving itself into the quiet tapestry of the dawn. Alistair listened, his head tilted slightly, savoring these first natural melodies. A soft breeze, almost a sigh, rustled the leaves of the silver birch tree near the corner of the garden. The sound was a gentle whispering shoosh, like soft taffeta brushing against itself. He watched the delicate leaves tremble and dance, their silvery undersides flashing briefly as they caught the light. This subtle movement added another layer of life to the scene, a visual counterpart to the gentle sounds. The air that flowed in carried not just scents, but also a feeling of freshness, a clean quality that spoke of the night's restorative dew. He took a slow, deliberate breath, drawing this garden air deep into his lungs, feeling its coolness and its vitality. His gaze drifted to a large terracotta pot on the windowsill just outside the open section of the window. In it, a collection of ferns grew, their fronds a vibrant, healthy green. He noticed a new frond, tightly coiled like a tiny green question mark, just beginning to unfurl. The process was imperceptibly slow, yet it spoke of constant, quiet growth, of life steadily asserting itself. He leaned a little closer to the window, observing the intricate, almost feathery texture of the mature fern leaves, some still holding tiny, glistening beads of dew in their crevices. There was a subtle, almost peppery scent emanating from the ferns, a fresh, green aroma that mingled with the scent of the damp soil in the pot. A small spider, nearly invisible against the dark wood of the window frame, was diligently repairing a section of its web that had perhaps been damaged by the night's condensation. Its tiny legs moved with astonishing speed and precision, laying down new threads of silk that gleamed faintly in the oblique morning light. Alastair watched its patient, meticulous work for a few moments, a miniature drama of industry unfolding in a quiet corner. These small observations, these fleeting glimpses into the intricate lives of the creatures sharing his garden, brought a sense of connection, a feeling of being part of a larger, interconnected whole. He took another sip of his tea, which was still pleasantly warm. The herbal flavors seemed to harmonize with the scents of the garden, creating a holistic sensory experience. The light outside was growing stronger now, the soft pinks and golds of early dawn slowly transitioning into the clearer, brighter light of full morning. Shadows were shortening and colors were becoming more defined, more saturated. The deep red of a rosebud, tightly closed just moments ago, seemed to be relaxing, its outer petals loosening slightly, hinting at the bloom to come. The world outside his window was a place of gentle, constant transformation, and he felt a quiet gratitude for this peaceful vantage point from which to observe it. The gentle sounds, the fresh scents, the subtle movements all contributed to a profound sense of peace, a quiet immersion in the beauty of an ordinary morning unfolding. Chapter 5. A Quiet Beginning. The last drops of tea were gone, leaving only the faint, lingering warmth in the depths of the terracotta mug. Alastair held it cradled in his hands for a few moments longer, savoring that residual heat, a gentle echo of the comfort it had provided. The sun, now fully risen above the horizon, streamed through the window, casting longer, softer shadows across the wooden floor and bathing the small living space in a gentle golden light. The intense, dramatic hues of the earliest dawn had mellowed into a clear, serene radiance that illuminated every corner of the room, picking out the texture of the corduroy armchair, the subtle grain of the wooden bookshelf, the soft sheen on the leaves of a potted plant in the corner. The sounds from the garden were a little more varied now, a little more active, though still imbued with a sense of morning peace. The initial tentative bird songs had swelled into a more confident, though still gentle chorus. He could distinguish the cheerful chirping of sparrows from the more melodious warble of a blackbird. A contented buzzing sound indicated a bumblebee, fat and fuzzy, already diligently exploring the early blossoms near the window. The gentle breeze continued its soft conversation with the leaves, a constant soothing whisper. From further afield, the distant, muted hum of the world gradually awakening could just be discerned, perhaps the far-off sound of a vehicle or the faint chime of a church bell, sounds so attenuated by distance that they blended seamlessly into the peaceful atmosphere. Alistair took a slow, easy breath, feeling the quiet satisfaction that often accompanied this morning ritual. The simple act of preparing and savoring his tea, combined with the peaceful observation of the dawn's arrival, had settled his mind, bringing a sense of calm readiness for the day ahead. There was no specific plan, no urgent task demanding his attention, only the gentle unfolding of time. He felt a sense of quiet contentment, a profound appreciation for the simple beauty of these ordinary moments. The warmth of the sun now beginning to fall across his hands and the arm of the chair was pleasant, a gentle caress. He carefully placed the empty mug on the small round side table that stood next to his armchair. The clink of ceramic on polished wood was a soft, definitive sound, a quiet punctuation mark at the end of his morning tea. He leaned back further into the chair, his body relaxed, his gaze still resting on the garden scene outside. The dew was beginning to evaporate from the leaves and petals as the sun's warmth grew, causing them to sparkle one last time before returning to their matte daytime appearance. A few petals from an overblown rose had fallen onto the grass, small splashes of faded pink against the green. The light in the room had a tangible quality, thick with golden motes of dust dancing in the sunbeams that slanted through the window. He watched them idly, these tiny pirouetting particles, each catching the light for a fleeting instant. It was a silent, mesmerizing ballet, a reminder of the unseen currents and movements always present in the air around him. The Sunstone Cottage felt filled with this peaceful light, a haven of warmth and quiet. The familiar objects in the room, a stack of books with well-worn spines, a knitted throw draped over the back of the sofa, a simple vase holding a few dried seed heads, all seemed to glow softly, imbued with a sense of serene domesticity. He remained there for a while longer, simply being, allowing the gentle sounds and the warm light to wash over him. There was a feeling of completeness, of a cycle gently concluded and a new one quietly begun. The day stretched before him unwritten, full of potential for more such quiet moments of observation and simple appreciation. The ritual of the dawn tea was more than just a habit. It was a way of connecting, of grounding himself, of starting the day with a sense of peace and awareness. And as the sun climbed higher, filling his small cottage with its cheerful light, Alistair felt ready, in the quietest, most unassuming way, for whatever gentle unfolding the day might bring.